Before we dive in, make sure to hit that subscribe button, smash that like, and let me know in the comments if you think you could survive a day in Pelican Bay. You won't believe what went down in this notorious prison. The first alarm screamed just after midnight, a piercing shriek that shattered the tense silence of the maximum security compound. Somewhere in the shadows, a man was running, a fleeting figure against the dim glow of security lights. Guards were shouting, their footsteps pounding on concrete, and the alarms echoed off the steel bars, a warning straight from the underworld. In that single moment, the fate of one of California's most infamous prisons hung by a thread. Inmates were either hiding, watching, or plotting. And somewhere in that chaos, an escape attempt was unfolding that would expose a deep-seated corruption buried within Pelican Bay State Prison. But this wasn't just a simple breakout. This wasn't one man slipping through a forgotten door. No, this was something far darker. A story of collusion, bribery, and secrets that some people in uniform would kill to keep hidden. When the smoke finally cleared, the fallout would shock the entire nation. Who would survive? Who would betray their allies? And who would be left paying the ultimate price? These questions burned through the prison like a wildfire, leaving one undeniable truth. Nobody at Pelican Bay would ever be the same again. Weeks earlier, before the alarms, before the chaos, before the desperate dash for freedom, everything had been meticulously planned in the shadows. But how could one man's audacity unravel the secrets of an entire institution? By dawn, the story would be everywhere. But for now, the night held its breath. Life inside Pelican Bay State Prison is a delicate balance of survival and secrecy. The cells are cold, steel cages with peeling paint, and the faint smell of disinfectant barely masks something far fouler beneath. Every corner of this place has eyes, and every shadow hides a story, some of desperation, some of deceit. Among the thousands of inmates, one man stood out. Marcus Rivera, better known as Ghost. And now, he was about to attempt something no one even dared to whisper, an escape from Pelican Bay. But Ghost knew he couldn't do it alone. Over months, he had carefully built alliances with other inmates, each with their own powerful motive for getting out. First, there was Leroy, a hulking enforcer with a temper that could ignite a riot in seconds. Then there was Jasmine, clever and resourceful, who knew the prison's security systems inside and out from her time working in the library stacks. And finally, there was the wild card, a guard on the night shift who owed Ghost a very dangerous favor, a secret that could cost lives if it ever got out. Meanwhile, the prison administration carried on as if everything was normal. Daily roll calls, head counts, and inspections created the illusion of absolute control. But just beneath that polished surface, pockets of corruption were thriving. Contraband somehow slipped past scanners. Bribes were quietly exchanged in secluded corners. A few well-placed keys, a few blind eyes, and the entire system could crumble in a matter of hours. Ghost spent his days mapping out every single routine. He memorized patrol patterns, noting which security cameras were actually functional and which were just empty props. Every whisper, every glance, every seemingly insignificant gesture could be the difference between life and death. The tension inside was a constant companion, a low hum in the back of every inmate's mind. And then there was the question that haunted everyone. Could trust really exist in a place designed to crush it? Your ally today could become your enemy tomorrow. Guards could be turned, tempted, or threatened into submission. Outside the walls, the world believed Pelican Bay was untouchable, an impenetrable fortress. But inside, that fortress was already cracking. Ghost knew it. He could feel it in his bones. And when the time came, the night of the escape would expose everything. The hidden deals, the compromises, the deep-seated corruption that had been festering like a wound beneath the prison's steel surface. The plan was in motion, but nobody, not even Ghost, knew just how far it would go or who would ultimately pay the price. The night of the escape was thick with a tense, coastal fog that clung to the prison walls like a shroud. The air was heavy, charged with unspoken fears and desperate hopes. Inside cell block C, Ghost lay on his bunk, his heart pounding a steady, rhythmic drum against his ribs. He had replayed this moment in his mind 1,000 times. Every detail, every contingency, every possible point of failure. This wasn't just about freedom. It was about exposing the rot at the core of Pelican Bay. For years, he had watched guards smuggle in contraband for a price, seen them turn a blind eye to violence in exchange for information, and witnessed how justice was a commodity, bought and sold in the shadows. Tonight, he was cashing in all his chips. His first move was a signal. A simple, folded piece of paper passed to Leroy during the evening meal. The note contained a single word: tonight. Leroy, with his intimidating presence, had a crucial role. His job was to create a diversion, a believable disruption in another cell block that would draw the attention of the guards away from Ghost's planned escape route. It was a high-risk move. A staged fight could easily spiral into a full-blown riot, and if it did, the entire prison would go into lockdown, sealing every door and window. At the same time, Jasmine was in the prison library, supposedly reshelving books. But her real task was far more critical. Using a small, makeshift tool she had fashioned over weeks, she was working to subtly disable the alarm sensor on a specific service corridor door, the one Ghost needed to get through. It was a delicate operation. One wrong move, one slip of the hand, and an alarm would sound, bringing guards running before the plan could even begin. Her hands were steady, her focus absolute. She knew the layout of the prison's old electrical plans by heart, a forgotten schematic she'd discovered tucked away in an old maintenance manual. The final piece of the puzzle was the corrupt guard, Officer Miller. Miller was a man drowning in gambling debts, a weakness Ghost had discovered and expertly exploited. For months, Ghost had been funneling him small amounts of cash through a network outside the prison walls. Tonight, Miller's debt came due. All he had to do was fail to properly lock a gate leading to the outer yard during his final patrol round. It was a simple act of negligence, one that could be easily explained away if anything went wrong. But for Miller, it felt like signing his own death warrant. His face was pale, his hands slick with sweat as he walked his beat, the jingle of his keys sounding like a death knell in the quiet hallway. As midnight approached, the tension in Pelican Bay was palpable. The air crackled with anticipation. Ghost watched the second hand of his cheap, contraband watch tick by. 3, 2, 1. From the far end of the prison, a loud crash echoed, followed by angry shouting. Leroy's diversion had begun, right on schedule. Within moments, alarms started blaring from cell block A. Guards scrambled, their radios crackling with urgent calls to contain the inmate altercation. This was Ghost's window. He slipped out of his cell, the lock expertly picked with a tool he'd spent weeks crafting. The hallways were eerily quiet, most of the staff drawn away by the chaos. He moved swiftly and silently, a true ghost in the machine. He reached the service corridor. The door, as planned, was silent. Jasmine had done her part. Now, for the final hurdle, the outer yard. He reached the gate Miller was supposed to have left unlocked. Ghost paused, his hand hovering over the latch. Was it open? Had the guard kept his word? He pushed. The gate swung open with a soft, metallic groan. Freedom was just a few hundred feet away, across a dark, fog-covered yard. But as Ghost stepped out into the night, a single, powerful floodlight suddenly snapped on, bathing him in a brilliant, blinding white light. A voice boomed from a nearby guard tower. Freeze. On the ground now. He was caught, trapped in the open. But how? The plan was perfect. Every detail had been accounted for. Then he saw him, standing near the base of the tower, with a smug, satisfied look on his face, was Officer Miller. The guard hadn't just double-crossed him. He had set a trap. Miller had reported the escape plan to the warden, trading Ghost's freedom for a clean slate and a hefty reward. The diversion, the disabled alarm, the unlocked gate, it was all part of a much larger setup, designed not just to stop Ghost, but to make an example of him. In that moment, Ghost realized his escape was never about getting over the wall. It was about forcing the prison's hand, about exposing the corruption from the inside. As guards swarmed him, he knew his capture would trigger an internal investigation. Miller's betrayal would be scrutinized. The warden's involvement in the setup would raise questions. The chaos Leroy had started was now a full-blown riot, and the media was already gathering outside the prison gates. His physical escape had failed, but his real mission was just beginning. He had lit the fuse, and now, Pelican Bay was about to explode. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you don't miss our next video. We'll see you in the next one. The days leading up to the escape were deceptively quiet. On the surface, Pelican Bay ran like clockwork, guards walking the same routes, inmates attending the same work assignments, meals served on schedule. But beneath that routine, a storm was quietly gathering. Ghost moved like a shadow. He slipped notes between unsuspecting inmates, memorized every camera angle, and quietly tested the loyalties of those around him. Each day was a delicate dance. One wrong move could land him in solitary, or worse. Leroy's presence was both a blessing and a danger. His size and strength intimidated the other prisoners, but his temper was unpredictable. Ghost had learned early that controlling Leroy meant feeding his ego, not his anger. Small favors, whispered encouragements, a nod here and there. Managing Leroy required patience that could rival a chess master. Jasmine worked from the inside, studying the routines of the guards and noting the weak points in the prison's network of cameras and patrols. She kept meticulous records, hiding them in her cell behind a false panel she had fashioned from scavenged materials. Her eyes were sharp, her mind even sharper, and her loyalty to Ghost was tested constantly by the temptations lurking around every corner. And then there was the guard, the one who owed Ghost a debt. A man who walked the fine line between duty and self-interest. He was the secret that could tip the balance. He smuggled small items, opened doors at critical moments, and provided Ghost with the intelligence that no inmate could otherwise access. But every favor came with risk, and one slip-up could unravel months of planning. Despite the careful plotting, danger was everywhere. Rival gangs watched from across the yard, some curious, others suspicious. The prison administration had begun to notice subtle changes, slightly altered routines, unexplained whispers, but they couldn't yet grasp the magnitude of what was unfolding. Ghost understood that this was more than just an escape. It was a test of human nature under extreme pressure. Betrayal lurked in every shadow, and even those he trusted could falter under fear or greed. The night of the escape was approaching, and with it, a tension so thick it could be cut with a knife. Inmates whispered in their cells, guards walked a little faster, and somewhere, deep within the bowels of Pelican Bay, a plan was set to unfold that would change the prison forever. And yet, even as Ghost and his allies prepared, one question hung over them like a storm cloud. Would the walls hold, or would Pelican Bay finally reveal all its secrets? The night was unusually silent, the kind of silence that presses against your ears and makes every heartbeat feel deafening. Ghost moved carefully through the dimly lit corridors, Leroy's massive frame following close behind, and Jasmine trailing with a bundle of carefully hidden tools. Every step had been rehearsed, every motion calculated. One mistake could mean instant discovery and death in the worst-case scenario. The first hurdle was simple but deadly, the main security doors. Ghost had timed the guards' patrols down to the second, and the corrupt guard was in position, waiting for the exact moment to disable a camera and unlock the electronic lock. The click of the door echoed like a gunshot in the empty hall, and for a brief second, the group froze, listening. "Move," Ghost whispered. They slipped through the hallway, shadows among shadows. The prison yard lay ahead, open but under the harsh glow of floodlights. Ghost had studied every angle, memorized every blind spot, and yet the tension was suffocating. A single glance from a guard could unravel everything. Then came the first unexpected complication. A rival gang member, lurking near the fence, spotted Leroy. In an instant, the yard erupted into chaos. Shouts rang out, metal clanging against metal as tension exploded into violence. Ghost realized the plan had gone off track. Already, the meticulous timing they had depended on was collapsing. Jasmine's quick thinking saved them. She distracted the guards with a thrown object, creating a momentary window. Ghost and Leroy surged forward, adrenaline pumping, their breaths ragged but controlled. Every second counted. Every heartbeat was a gamble. As they approached the outer fence, the corrupted guard made his move, opening a side gate that should have been impossible to unlock without authorization. Freedom was tantalizingly close, but the prison, like a living entity, was fighting back. Alarms began to blare from the other side of the yard, and backup guards started converging on their location. Ghost realized then that this was more than an escape attempt. It was a confrontation with everything Pelican Bay had been hiding: corruption, betrayal, and the fragile threads of loyalty. The walls were no longer just physical barriers. They were symbols of the system they were challenging, a system that would not let them leave without paying a price. With one final glance at each other, Ghost, Leroy, and Jasmine sprinted toward the gate, every muscle burning, every sense heightened. And just as they reached the threshold, a shadow fell over them. Someone else was watching. The shadow that loomed over them was no ordinary guard. It was someone Ghost had trusted, or thought he had. The man stepped forward, hand hovering over his belt, eyes cold and calculating. In that instant, Ghost realized the escape had been compromised from within. "Going somewhere," the guard sneered, his voice low but venomous. The calm precision of the plan unraveled like a thread caught in a storm. Leroy growled, stepping protectively in front of Ghost and Jasmine. But the moment was already slipping through their fingers. The yard, once a space of opportunity, had become a trap. Other guards, alerted by the earlier chaos, were closing in faster than any of them could react. Ghost had to think fast. Betrayal was the new danger, more lethal than steel bars or alarms. He had counted on a single corrupt guard, but now it seemed there were layers of deception even he hadn't anticipated. Somewhere, someone else was feeding information, watching every move they made. Jasmine acted first. With a swift motion, she hurled a makeshift smoke bomb they had hidden for emergencies. Thick clouds of acrid smoke swallowed the yard, momentarily blinding the approaching guards. Chaos became their ally, giving them precious seconds to escape. "Split up," Ghost shouted, and they scattered. Leroy barreled forward, using his sheer size to push through, while Ghost and Jasmine darted to the side, sticking to shadows. Every step carried the risk of discovery. Every heartbeat screamed danger. But the betrayal cut deeper than the physical threat. Ghost realized that someone he had relied on, someone he believed shared his goal of exposing corruption, had a hidden agenda. It wasn't just about stopping the escape. It was about maintaining a system built on fear and manipulation. As alarms screamed louder and the night erupted into chaos, Ghost made a critical choice. Survival first, exposure second. If he could make it out alive, he could tell the world what Pelican Bay really was: a fortress of corruption, built on secrets and lies that powerful people would kill to protect. But as he sprinted through the smoke and shadows, he caught a glimpse of movement near the gate. The corrupted guard, aiming not to help, but to contain. Ghost's heart pounded as realization hit. Escaping Pelican Bay wasn't just a matter of outsmarting the system. It was about surviving those he thought were allies. And in that instant, with danger closing from every side, one thought dominated his mind: trust no one, not even those who claim to be on your side. The night had turned into a living nightmare. Smoke choked the yard, alarms blared, and the once familiar corridors of Pelican Bay now felt like a labyrinth designed to trap them forever. Ghost's lungs burned, every step threatening to betray him, but he couldn't stop. Not now. Not when the truth was within reach. Leroy had been cornered near the perimeter fence, fighting off two guards with sheer brute force. Every swing of his fists was a desperate attempt to buy time, but the numbers were overwhelming. Ghost and Jasmine slipped through a side corridor, guided only by memory and instinct. Then came the revelation that would shock them both. In the chaos, Ghost discovered files hidden in the guard's office, documents, ledgers, and secret recordings detailing bribery, manipulation, and illegal deals. This was the evidence Pelican Bay's administration had fought so hard to keep hidden. The corruption wasn't just on the surface. It ran deep, implicating officials, guards, and even state contractors. Ghost realized the escape wasn't just about freedom. It was about exposing a system built on lies. Every risk, every betrayal, every calculated move was now part of a larger story that could shake the foundations of power beyond the prison walls. But the danger was far from over. As Ghost and Jasmine gathered the evidence, footsteps echoed behind them. The corrupted guard had tracked them down, and he wasn't planning to let them leave with the proof. Confrontation was inevitable. "You think you can walk out with this?" The guard spat, reaching for his weapon. Ghost's heart pounded, but he remained calm. Every moment was a gamble, every decision a potential death sentence. With Jasmine by his side, he navigated a maze of corridors, using every trick he had learned to evade capture. Guards flooded the area, but Ghost's knowledge of the prison's hidden passages gave him an edge. Finally, they reached the outer wall, the same wall that had haunted his dreams for months. Rope, hooks, and sheer determination were their tools. As they climbed, alarms screamed around them, but the evidence in their hands made the risk worth it. And then, just as the first hint of dawn brushed the horizon, Ghost paused, looking back at Pelican Bay. The fortress that had held him, broken him, and betrayed him loomed behind, but now, the truth was his weapon. For the first time in years, he felt the taste of freedom and the weight of what he had uncovered. Pelican Bay would never be able to hide again. Ghost's boots hit the wet grass outside the prison walls just as the first sirens echoed behind him. Jasmine stumbled beside him, breathless, clutching the bundle of files like it was life itself. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. The world beyond Pelican Bay felt foreign, the air too clean, the silence too honest. They didn't have long. Helicopter lights cut through the dawn fog, sweeping the area. Ghost knew the search would begin immediately. There would be no rest, no celebration. Freedom was only temporary. Survival now depended on what he could do with the truth he carried. By the next evening, news stations across California were on fire with reports of an attempted escape and unverified claims of internal corruption. The Department of Corrections denied everything, calling Ghost a manipulator, a career criminal, a liar. But then, the recordings surfaced, leaked audio of guards exchanging cash, higher-ups covering up inmate abuse, and a warden approving illicit contracts for personal gain. It was irrefutable. Within days, Pelican Bay's administration was thrown into chaos. Resignations, investigations, and public outrage followed. For the first time in decades, the fortress had cracks wide enough for the world to see. But not everyone made it out. Leroy was caught, beaten, and thrown into solitary. Jasmine disappeared days after the story broke. Some said she made it to Oregon. Others whispered the system silenced her. Ghost. He became a ghost again, vanished into the wind, never found, never confirmed dead or alive. Yet the legend of that night refused to die. In prison yards across America, inmates spoke of Ghost, the man who not only escaped Pelican Bay, but dragged its corruption into the light. Some called him a hero. Others called him a myth. The truth? Somewhere in between. And Pelican Bay itself, it never truly recovered. New faces filled old offices. New rules replaced old ones, but the scars remained. Every guard, every inmate, every shadow in those halls carried the memory of that night. The night one man's defiance exposed a monster wearing a uniform. Maybe Ghost didn't just escape from prison. Maybe he escaped the system. Maybe he became the very thing they feared most. Proof that the truth, once free, can't be locked away again. And if you think that story shook you, you haven't seen anything yet. Because in the dark corners of America's most secure prisons, other secrets are waiting, and one day, they'll break free too. So if you want to hear the next untold story, hit that subscribe, drop a like, and tell me in the comments. Would you have trusted anyone inside Pelican Bay?